We are on a mission to help 1 billion people make a living doing what they love. Everything that we do is working towards that thing.
Today, I'm joined by Ben Burns, the COO of The Future, an educational platform helping creative professionals build businesses on their own terms.
I don't think content or paid products should come first if you're trying to educate and help other people. But for everybody who has a course, I'm looking at you. When's the last time that you actually looked at your analytics? Because I would wager a bet that only 20%, 18%, 30% of your students are even finishing the course.
Ben has introduced innovative tools like the AI-powered coaching tool DoBot and successfully navigated the ever-changing creator economy by adapting and evolving to stay ahead of the curve.
If you can create an incredible product, if you can create an incredible community that delivers value to the people who pay you to join, that will outlast your relevance in the social sphere.
Ben, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm stoked. Let's dig in.
I wanted to have you on for a couple reasons. The first is I'm a big fan of The Future and the content that Christo and you put out. I think the second reason is when I look at the business, what I can see it's publicly available. You guys have done a really cool job of extending from content into commerce, which my sense is it really centers around educational content and community and membership. So yeah, I'm excited to explore that with you a little bit and kind of understand what your role to play is and all that.
Absolutely. I'm an open book.
What is The Future exactly?
All right. So The Future is an education company at its core. And we are on a mission to help 1 billion people make a living doing what they love. That is our mission. We live and die by it. And everything that we do is working towards that thing. 1 billion people is a lot. That's
a lot of people.
We call it a big ass hairy goal. And we're working towards that through education. And we educate on a couple of different fronts. The first is YouTube. Obviously, we've got 2 channels. We've got The Future and The Future Academy. We tend to talk mostly about business on The Future proper, right? And then we dig into creative skills on The Future Academy. So we'll teach design principles and using creative tools and all that kind of stuff on that second channel. And then we've got a whole host of paid products. I mean, we probably have, at this point, 60 or 70 different SKUs, depending on where you're looking in the company. And that doesn't even include any of the merch that we're putting out. That's just educational products.
Gotcha. How did you... there's some creators and some YouTubers that I come across who started with content plus commerce from day one, but probably more that started with just content and then brought the commerce in later. What was your journey to the intersection of content and commerce like?
Thinking back to the origin of the company, The Future began life as the school, spelled SKOOL. And it was this joint venture between Christo, who's our founder, and Jose Caballero, who created the channel initially. And the channel was created in order to sell a product, which was Core. This is our first product that the school, then The Future, ever produced. And it's an educational walkthrough of how to lead a discovery call with your clients. And so that's how the YouTube channel was born. It was in order to sell that thing, and it has grown from there. So we kind of started simultaneously.
Do you think that is there a better approach? Do you think it's better to start with just the content, or would you recommend to creators that they think about the commerce piece from the beginning?
It depends on what kind of content or what kind of business you want to create. From day one, Chris has always wanted to educate. Like that is his purpose. He is a teacher, and he's a great teacher. And so
in juxtaposition to someone who's making content maybe primarily to entertain.
Right. Yeah. And I look at content under like kind of three umbrellas. There's education, which is where we fall in. There's entertainment, which is probably something like Mr. Beast or, 90% of other YouTube channels.
Sure.
But then there's also access, right? There's content creators that give you access to different corners of life that you wouldn't have access to.
This is more of like is this more like the behind the scenes, or is it access to what do you mean by the access piece exactly?
Behind the scenes, it's easy to say like news, but it almost like the content is not meant to entertain. It's not designed to educate. It's more designed to like enlighten almost,
Okay.
or shine shine a light into a dark corner. And I think that like if you're starting an education company, then yeah, I would totally recommend that. I think that starting with both free and paid content is really strong because one can feed the other. If your mission is to entertain, like if you're, starting a channel in the theme of Mr. Beast, no, I would not recommend it. But
Makes
either
sense.
way,
I think that's a good dividing line, and your point resonates with me. What is the organization? So you're supporting the content side, the commerce side. Like you said, you've got like 70 SKUs. What type of a team, what type of an organization does it take to support that level of scale?
oh man, that's a good question. And it's changed over the years. But if I could, I want to throw it right back to the first part because I've got a tip for creators who are just starting out. I don't think content or paid products should come first if you're trying to educate and help other people. I think you should find one person to help. The one-on-one interaction, if let's say, most of our crowd is designers. Let's say you're a designer and you want to create a social media presence, creating content to educate. You're going to want to, you want to sell courses that are focused on design. Find one person that you can help become a better designer or whatever it is you do. Do that for free and get them to the point where they have succeeded, right? Take notes along the process, record the process of you helping them. Then at the end, do it again. If you can help two people go from point A to point B and compare your notes, you're going to find the patterns. You're going to find the things that worked. You're going to find the things that didn't. You're going to find those things that like somebody wanted to know. And then you're also going to find the things that somebody needed to know. And they're not often the same things, right? And so by using an actual real human being or interacting with another person, you can track down those patterns. Then you can base your education ecosystem, both paid and free, on your experience with helping that person. That's why teachers, like people who teach in school, make such great content creators because they know exactly what the students want to hear. That's usually the content.
Right.
And they also know what they need to hear, and that's typically the value.
It reminds me a lot of advice you hear from an incubator in the tech world like Y Combinator and people that are starting businesses in tech. It's the advice is typically just get to market and go find one customer and start building for that one customer.
Yep.
Which then forces you to get, well, very, very close to the customer and their wants and needs. Okay, you get some traction, do it again, get your second customer. And then maybe you can start to extrapolate to a real, like a more scaled business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you position that. It sounds like in a lot of maybe your coaching content or your advice for new creators, it's maybe start a services business, find 1 to 2 customers, then
maybe not even
go
that. I mean,
broader.
that kind of sounds intimidating to me.
I guess your point was just do it for free. Just do it for free and learn.
Yeah. The thing is that if you do it for free and you take notes, that's the biggest key, right? Because it might take somebody 3, 4, 6 10 months to have the transformation that you can talk about.
Mm.
Taking notes during the process, those notes will become the content. Those notes will become the courses. Those notes will become the products, templates, resources that you can create for money, right?
Yeah. This is like the when you're making furniture, you like film record the sawdust. Like the sawdust is the content that
Yeah.
that you put out into the world.
Yeah.
But back to the first question though, like how do you? I mean, you and Chris you've gone along this journey, and you're pretty far along.
Yeah.
What kind of a team does it take to operate where you're at today in the journey?
It's changed over the years. And it's funny that you said that we've come a long way, because I got a DM from somebody on Twitter. He said, "Hey man, oh, it was so cool. Back in the day when I was in school, I used to watch your YouTube videos." I was like, wow, okay. So I guess 6 years is now considered back in the day. All right. Yeah, so we've been at it for a long time, and our team size has changed over time.
Mm.
When I started at The Future, I was actually not an employee of The Future.
Mm.
I was kind of acqui-hired out of my own agency, my own studio.
Hmm.
I started at Chris's agency called Blind as their digital director. And so I was
Okay.
running projects, creating websites for clients, creating digital experiences, helping out with branding projects, that kind of thing. And the team at Blind at that point, depending on the project, we had 22 full-time employees, and then the team would scale. I mean, all the way up to 40, 50, 60 people, depending on how
So
many
you would flex
freelancers.
up, flex down,
Yeah.
depending on the project
Like we would,
based nature of the work.
yeah, we did there's a massive project for Xbox that we were working on, and I think that there was probably 30 freelancers that were in and out in those days. So it was a big team. And at that point, The Future was small. It was what we did, on our lunch hour and in the evenings. I can remember I actually did a day in the life during that time when Blind was the full-time job. And then The Future was something that we all kind of contributed to in between. And even, they say the 9 to 5 and then the 5 to 9. Well, for us, it was like after the kids went down, 9 p.m. to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. That's where The Future was really built. So eventually we transitioned most of our team into roles at The Future as we dialed Blind down, and then ramped The Future up. Most of the people who were good fits found a role at The Future. And so when we first started, I think we had a team of 17 or 18. And then we peaked maybe 2 years ago with 21 people, I believe. Now we've settled in around 12. And that seems to be a happy place for what we're doing.
What are those people, those 12 people, what do they do? And then maybe as an extension of that, what do you do?
Again, that's changed over the years depending on the needs of the company. In the beginning, we had a very large production team. So we were producing a lot more content that was planned, put together, either scripted or situations where were built to have, the team, Chris, our creative directors, react to things. People were bringing in, we're doing live coaching or, recorded coaching. So we were doing a lot more planned content, and that required more bodies on the production side. So camera operators, people to manage the gear, writers, directors, people to edit the videos, post, social media managers, that kind of thing. Now the production side is a lot more lean. Most of the content that we are coming out with are recorded coaching calls that, Chris is reacting to something, or he's whiteboarding something in his office to a very small group of people, or we're recording him on tour where he's speaking in front of people and the lighting's good and questions are good and the energy is there. So we found a way to create actually more content now in terms of quantity, with a lot slimmer team.
Yeah, so it's more of a, just to double click into that, there's sort of like a philosophical and practical shift towards what content with less pre-production, or is it like longer duration, higher quality content, maybe less scripted? How would you characterize that?
A little bit of both. I mean, I think it's less about trying to engineer the content, for the audience, and more about recording what's actually happening.
Okay, so back to the sawdust
Right.
analogy.
Yep. So it doesn't have, like, our longer form videos tend to perform better than the short videos. I mean, if we put out an hour long video, it's definitely going to do better than some of our 5 and 10 minutes. But inside that hour long video, Chris being Chris, he's a great public speaker and he's an incredible educator, and he's really good at the sound bites. Yeah. So it just happens as a part of his natural way of speaking and natural way of educating. We'll grab those little sound bites. So 2021, 2022 were huge growth years in terms of subscribers for us. And it was because we were doing these cut downs and publishing them on YouTube as shorts. And a couple of those went viral and the audience grew from that. So I think it's more just documenting what's happening instead of engineering things.
Makes sense. Where do you fit into the picture as the COO?
Yeah.
And then I'm particularly interested in what your relationship with someone like Chris Do is within the organization, and how you split up the jobs that need to be done.
This year's a little different. We're kind of experimenting with trying to bring me into the spotlight a little more. So a lot of the stuff I was doing before has been taken off my plate. So managing less people, managing less projects, that kind of thing. So this is all new. And it's with anything in business, if it's new, it's going to be bumpy. So we've been experimenting with this, like, what would it take to get Ben on the channel more, to get me out interacting with people more, to get me coaching. Before this year, though, I was running everything behind the scenes. So Chris was creating content, and he was incredibly prolific at creating content. And then I was handling the entire engine that runs the Futur behind the scenes. So all of our e-commerce, all of the marketing, all of the product production, a lot of the curriculum design, the technology that drives our community groups, and the website. God, I think that's about it. But
that's it.
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
All the things.
I wore a lot of hats and managed a lot of people that were helping us run the business side of the Future that the content was driving folks towards.
So Chris he's in front of the camera a lot, and he's clearly a very, very talented creator. And you were highlighting some of the ways in which he was so talented. The soundbite thing to me is very interesting, and he strikes me as a guy who's like always on, always teaching, always coaching. But then presumably he also has to be a person who's making, along with you, high quality business decisions in the business. How do you balance that?
Most of the business decisions that I need to bring Chris on are things like major product decisions, catalog decisions, things like do we start venturing into this space, right? And the thing about Chris is like he is completely and utterly current. So he is on the cutting edge of everything that's going on the internet. He was talking about NFTs
So is
before
it
they
like
blew up.
the positive version of being chronically online?
Yeah, pretty much, right? So he was on NFTs before they blew up. He was on AI before they blew up. And so a lot of times he'll bring me a new road and I'm going to figure out how to do it. And that's the way that we've kind of structured our relationship for a long time. I'm responsible for making Chris's vision real. That's my role. And so sometimes I have the unfortunate responsibility of telling him, hey, this is not a good idea, or this is not, feasible, or not in our best interest, like with the in the NFT days.
That had some pretty mixed outcomes. I'd say probably a pretty solid negative skew.
Yeah, a lot of people made money. A lot of people lost money.
Yeah.
So thankfully,
so he's sort of filling this visionary founder role, and then you're the integrator, it sounds like, and you're helping him edit. Maybe, is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, maybe. I enable everything that I can. So when AI first started to become in vogue, when ChatGPT released its first version, Chris was like, we have to be able to use this for education. We have to be able to use this for coaching. And so we put our heads together and we came up with the concept for DoBot. And he worked with an external company to kind of get Chris Do into a coaching robot that is now accessible by one tier of our paid members.
Sure.
And the cool thing is that, we've got this huge library of his calls. We're talking, I think we're up to 800 videos at this point where he's coaching pro members. This is 7 years of 2 to 4 calls per month, and each video is 2 to 3 hours long. So we've got this entire lexicon of knowledge.
And so then you have this sort of generative AI DoBot that can then can reference this huge library of knowledge.
Right. And so that way, number one, the member can get pointed in the right direction, right? The bot can tell them exactly what video to watch at what timestamp. But it also does coaching based on Chris's content, which we find incredibly surprisingly successful. Because I'm not a huge believer in our robot overlords, but the way that DoBot is helping people and pointing them in the right direction and giving them scripts, like while they're on the phone, they can sit there and type something up like, hey, what do I do here? And it pulls instantly from a video and says, you should say this, right? It's been wildly successful in helping our members. So that's just an example of Chris going, hey, here's a trend. We got to figure this out, put our heads together, brought in the right person to get the job done, and made it happen.
Totally makes sense. And I think I see that visionary plus integrator combination of personalities and skill sets seems to be a pretty common one that we encounter. In the creator world. But then you're kind of bleeding over a little bit into the talent space, because you mentioned that you're now coming more forward into the spotlight. What's the business rationale behind that?
This is interesting. The Futur is not it's not altogether a personality driven brand. It's a publisher. And so if you look at our catalog of products, Chris is not on every one. And that's one thing that we've had to kind of like wrestle with, because a lot of the creator economy relies on one creator who creates content and then pulls people into their education ecosystem. But with the Futur, the vision from the beginning was not to have every single product created by Chris. It was to provide a publishing platform for incredible educators that wouldn't otherwise have the voice, and we would use our platform to do that. The cool thing is that we opened it to anybody who's on the internal team to publish any kind of product that they were looking for.
That's very cool. So you're kind of naturally incubating talent from folks that are already within the business.
Yes.
And pulling them forward. Okay.
Yep. And there's a rigorous process that we go through to make sure that the curriculum is on point and that the value is delivered, right? We've got people that are internally responsible for that. Stephanie Owens, who's our education director, is incredible at sculpting a learning piece material.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is that as we were growing the future, I had the opportunity to sit down with customers, to sit down with people in our audience. I was doing those one-on-ones, right? I had grown my own agency. I had, worked my way up through the levels, the tiers of selling creative work, and worked at the highest level at Blind. And so I was doing these one-on-one calls for messaging purposes to kind of understand who we were talking to and all this kind of stuff. And through the course of that process, I came up with some product ideas. If you look at the Future website, I think I've got, 7, 8, 9 products in the store, including our Accelerator membership. So
yeah, you're right. You're right there on the landing page.
Yeah.
The second or third block, I think.
Yep.
It's sort of you're pointing out like two, I think, kind of interesting trends. Well, I think one of them is bigger and more widespread. The first smaller one is, I've personally been pushing more COOs in part with this podcast, right?
Sure.
To be on camera. You've been on camera a lot. I'd say maybe 75% of the folks that we talk to on this podcast, this is their first podcast.
Oh, that's cool.
So you're definitely not in the norm, but
good for them.
I do love that trend of seeing more of the operators coming forward, the creator operators. The bigger trend, though, you mentioned, you referred to the Future as did you say a publisher, like a publishing brand?
Yep.
I think that's going to be one of the top 3 trends in the creator world broadly, but the YouTube ecosystem specifically this year. I mean, it really felt like we saw a ramp up in last year. It felt like we saw a ramp up in creators creating brands and then starting to diversify to more and more talent underneath. I have some suspicions as to why, like the rationale, but this year it feels like it's accelerated, and we're recording this in March. So I think it feels to me like this year is the year of the sort of the creator extending up beyond themselves and creating an umbrella brand.
Yeah.
And you've done it in a very unique way. It's like you're not going outside looking for talent. You're incubating talent internally from your employees, which makes sense given what you're teaching.
We go outside too. We launched a course last fall with a creator named Made by James. Incredible human being, super engaging, great backstory, great content, super fun. And it did really well. So we do these joint launches as well, where, we, the publisher, are marketing the course, but then also the author, are marketing the course. So sometimes, we do go outside, and I think one of the things that I'm most proud of, or one of the products that I'm most proud of that we've created, is we've given the platform to 2 instructors from Art Center, Nils Lindstrom and Errol Garrison. I mean, I think Errol Garrison's been teaching at Art Center he celebrated his 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
Incredible teachers, right? But they're only exposed to 10, 12, 15 people in any given semester. They're treasures that no one can see. And so I am really proud of being able to give our voice and our reach to people like that, who can change the world for somebody who takes their class, but just didn't have the reach. So I think we're coming at it from a really unique way. The easy thing to do would be just to focus on people with the audience, right? Like, hey, let us come in. We'll bring our expertise in education. We'll help you
Right.
create a course, and we'll rely on your reach. But honestly, like what the most rewarding thing for me is to see somebody like Arrow with a platform that he wouldn't otherwise be able to have at this point.
That's a very cool mission. Yeah, to your point, there's so many talented educators who, as you said, they teach classes in person. They reach 10, 15 people a semester, and you can help them to get their message out. That's amazing. There's so many different reasons we're seeing this publisher thing. I don't know if all of these apply to um, to you and Chris. I mean, I'm sure some of them would and some of them won't. But
Sure.
um, I'm curious your reaction to some of these, perhaps, on the journey from creator to brand. I've seen a lot of YouTubers get burnt out, and so there's a question, I think, in a lot of creators' minds. Maybe I can keep doing this. Maybe I can keep up this production schedule for 1, 2, 3 more years, but I want to get to a place where I can take a step back. And so maybe that necessitates bringing in, some diversified talent.
I'm a big believer in the one person business. Like I absolutely love seeing solo studios out there just absolutely crushing things.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. The risk of burnout is definitely real though.
And some people, like maybe Chris, has so much energy he can do it forever, but not everybody probably fits in that. Not everyone's a Chris, and I mean that in the kindest way possible.
But I
Um,
do think that that's a major fallacy though. I think that
like you can do it in a more sustainable way.
I think the first reaction to somebody starting to get burned out, especially in the YouTube space, who's been doing this alone, I think the first reaction is, "Oh, I just need to hire help to get me, so that I can continue doing this." And that might be the right answer. What they don't realize is that by doing that, they're replacing some of the work that they're doing with management,
Mm,
which is also work. Now, great managers, great leaders can leverage more people to get more done. But I see a lot of people in the creative space, right? Creative service providers, designers, engineers, that kind of thing, who will start hiring people to help them get more work done. And they're like,
mm,
why aren't you getting as much done as I am? What's everybody doing, right? Why is this slower? And I think that we need to meter some expectations that number one, scaling is not always the right answer. And number two, you got to recognize that hiring more people will replace some of the work with more work, which is managing people. It's just a different kind of problem.
yeah. I think the second most common reason I'm seeing for that creator to brand extension is this desire maybe to like go into new markets where either, like, let's say you're an educator, maybe there's another topic that you want to educate on, but you personally don't have the expertise. Or alternatively, like maybe there's a different demographic or psychographic of audience you want to target. An example that comes to mind of this is Epic Gardening and Kevin, primarily an outdoor gardening channel, but they see a lot of growth potential in indoor gardening.
Mm-hmm.
And like the audience, the demographic that watches indoor gardening is typically very different from outdoor gardening. And so maybe you want some talent that is more like demographically representative of that audience.
Yeah, yeah. I hesitate to use the word demographic because that implies like factors that people can't really control.
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe psychographic is a better way to put it. But I see a potential for success in that route because what you're really doing is you're creating an NBA team, right? NBA teams, they'll practice together, they'll play games together. But the superstars on the team, like the starting lineup, they all have their own things, right? Jordan's got shoes, whatever. They all have their own stuff going on. They've got their own socials, all that kind of stuff, but they come together for the big mission. And I see it as, people are going to be drawn to one or two of the people on the team personally. Like they're going to be drawn to that personality. And so if you have a group of people that are all, playing the game,
Yeah.
you're going to draw more people. You're going to draw more.
To continue the Bulls analogy, some people were more drawn to Michael Jordan, some people more drawn to Pippen. Some people, some of the crazy, some of the which I put myself in the bucket, really loved the Rodman mystique.
Right.
Yeah.
And they all had their own business opportunities. They all had their own interests. They all had their own way of speaking and addressing. They just wore the same uniform, sometimes in slightly different ways, but they all came together and did the thing. So I do see a lot of potential there. And that's getting back to your question. That's kind of why we're doing this, right? Commercially, the Accelerator membership that I've created is having incredible results, right? Sales are up, members are doing really well. And what's even more important, we're actually having impact on the people in a major way. Like we're taking people from $0 to 5-figure projects. We're taking people from being solo to hiring their first, second, third people. People need to know about that. And so that's where it's like, okay, now we need to move you into the spotlight because we got to get more attention, not only on you, but also what we're doing in this program that you're leading. So that's the reason we're creating our own MBA team.
On that note, why did you decide to launch this membership and community experience?
Oh,
when
the specific
the
one?
course, yeah, I think that's what you're referencing, right? It's your membership and community service or product. What was the rationale there? Because I think there's this. And I say this as a biased person who spends most of their time helping people with memberships and communities. But like, I think there's this perception sometimes in the educational creator market that communities, memberships, they're more complex. You have to deliver a lot of value over time. Maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? The ROI isn't there. Hey, I want to focus. I want to stay with the course thing. It's what I know. I know how to market and sell them.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that positioning and how did you overcome that hurdle? I mean, obviously you overcame it because you launched it and you're so bullish.
I'll go way back. When I was running my own studio, Chris was just starting to create YouTube content. I mean, this is 2013, 2014. We're talking about a decade ago. My God. I found a video that he and Jose did, and that led me down the path of buying one of their products. And I became a super fan. They were shining a light into the dark corner where I was standing. I couldn't see anything, right? And they helped me with their content so much that when they opened their first community group, which was the Future Pro members, or I think at that time it was School Pro, I just jumped on it, right? It was super cheap. I think it was like $25 a month, but I was in it. And they were doing calls on a weekly basis at that time. Every single week, we would get to jump on a call with an Emmy award-winning designer. And he would interact with us and solve problems and, mentor and all that kind of good stuff. So Pro membership has succeeded, but that community is more about community and coaching. It also speaks to a creative entrepreneur that's further along in their journey, right? It's somebody who's looking to hire or struggling with complexities of scale. Their lead generation is good, but they're losing jobs on the negotiation side, right? They're not able to close the deals that they're getting on the calls with. So we realized that a lot of the more experienced folks had problems that, Chris was very interested in helping. And then also the new folks, like the people at the beginning of their journey, were skipping vital steps in order to participate in those conversations. Things like they didn't have a portfolio. They weren't writing case studies of their work. They didn't know how to generate leads. Their services, processes, systems were all over the place, right? These are vital steps in order to have the kind of conversations that we were having in Pro. And so last year, I offered to take that responsibility. I said, give me all the people who are just starting out, right? So we had this big split in our community group. So give me all the people who are struggling to find traction, trying to start these creative businesses, and I'll see if I can come up with a way to help them. And so while Pro is community and coaching, Accelerator is a little different because Accelerator is also a course. Now, the thing about courses, and I think that getting back to your question, it's like, why move into communities when you can focus on courses and you just create it once and then you can kind of forget about it as long as you're promoting it, right? That's great and all. But for everybody who has a course, I'm looking at you. When's the last time that you actually looked at your analytics? Your course analytics, not your content. I'm not talking about YouTube Studio. I'm talking about your course analytics. Because I would wager a bet that only 20%, 18%, 30% of your students are even finishing the course.
I think you nailed it. I mean, so curious to hear your take on this, but I think over the last decade or so, it feels like there's been a bit of what I might call like course fatigue in the market. And in part, it's because and you see it in the data, like you're pointing out. You have customers who come, people in your audience, your community, who they're coming to you really for a transformation, not just to learn, but they want to embody the transformation and transform themselves. And so they buy the course and they get that dopamine hit, but then your completion rates are low. And then from a business perspective, potentially even more damning is that if your completion rates are low, your repeat transaction purchases are low, and you can exhaust that fan base pretty quickly. And so then really what matters, if you think longer term, if you're a long-term optimizer, is what you care about is delivering on the transformation for your customer, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the tragedy is that most creators out there, people who are focused on creating content and then supporting their content business with product, it might be a great course, but it could just be written in a way that makes it confusing to understand. It could be, chock full of value, but difficult to consume. Or it could be just completely not valuable. And you'll never know that if you're not focused on your customer results, right? And I like to think of it like this. If you're a content creator and you've grown a sizable audience, right? Let's say you've got 20,000 subscribers, 100,000, a million, 5 million, right? You've filled the well of your audience's gratitude. And every crappy product that you put out takes a scoop out of that well.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, every product that you put out that doesn't really deliver on, or doesn't really over deliver on value, if the product isn't great, if it isn't obsessed over, you're taking gratitude out of that well. And even if the number's still there, even if you've got those millions of followers, if you've drained your well, that's it. That's why, I'm not impressed.
Yeah.
With
you can take a lot of scoops really fast out of that well. That well runs dry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see, and I mean, I assume you'd agree with this, but I personally see that a lot.
Yep. And honestly, that's why I'm not impressed with somebody's first launch number, right? They hit 100,000 subs or 1 million subs, and then they launch a course and it brings in $1 million. Big deal. Do it for 7 years and show me the impact that you've had on your customers. That I will be impressed with. That is what I care about. And that's why we did the Accelerator membership the way that we did it. I recognize that.
How do you make sure that you're delivering? And so this, I think, is the other somewhat related concern. It's like, if you sign somebody up to a subscription, then you have to deliver enough value to justify the value prop, the price point.
Yep.
How do you make sure that you're delivering the appropriate amount of value?
I think it's different depending on what kind of product you're delivering. If you look at, I don't know, a tool that you use, maybe you're in the YouTube space and you use vidIQ, for example. You pay every month, $20, $50, $100, whatever, and you get access to the tool. And so it constantly provides values. This is something that somebody has made once and improved over time, and you're reaping the benefits or the value in exchange for your monthly subscription. What happens with a lot of content creators is the subscription might be a library of videos like Patreon. It might be, a course, for example. Once the value is consumed, it's gone. And so you got to figure out some other way, which the way that we're doing it in Accelerator, number one, is the student cannot consume the entire course without doing anything. And so this gets us into some crazy technology duct tape that we can delve into. But in order for them
blocking
to move
a portion of the catalog based
every
on
module. Every module. And so the student completes module number 1, we check their work and allow them to move into module number 2. And so for us, it is accountability, and it's making sure that this is not some passive consumption, right? It's making sure that they just don't burn through the content, pick out the 2 things that they're willing to do, and then move on. Because we know the system works based on years of free one-on-ones and years of paid one-on-ones coaching, right? We know this system works. And so we want to push somebody through it. So number 1, accountability, right? Being able to get the feedback on their work, unlock modules as they go. We also do this with community. So putting people in the same space, allowing them to talk to each other, critique each other's work, allowing them to have access to our team, me, Chris, in the case of the pro group. That way, like say on Tuesday, if somebody's got a business problem, they don't know, how to respond to a client email or something, we can quickly type up a response and give them some advice.
Sure.
Then we also provide coaching calls. And so every Friday from 3 to 5 my time, I'm live with Accelerator members, and we share wins. We go through.
Oh, interesting. So you have is it like an office hours type format where you're available, and then people are bringing questions to you, problems?
Yeah. Huh. So we do wins. We talk about curriculum obstacles. So if anybody's feeling stuck or whatever, needs some advice on an assignment or something like that, bring that. And then at the end, we handle any kind of in real life coaching. So if they're going through a problem with their business partner, or they're struggling with a client, or they're in a desperate place where they need leads, we coach them through that stuff.
How much of the value in the community do you think the members are getting from their interactions with each other versus their interactions with you and Chris?
A community needs a shared understanding to have discussions. And so we've had communities that are open, broad, join this and have interactions with your peers, that kind of thing. Without the shared understanding, without the backbone of knowledge, you never know where that's going to go, right? So community members, number 1,
can go in
give
negative
terrible
or
advice,
unproductive directions.
It could go in they could be, I don't know, mean, but
toxic.
Yeah. But if you have a shared understanding and you've done your job in number 1, educating, but then also making sure that you're holding people accountable, the community can fill in for you. And that's what we find. I'm not responding to comments on Saturdays and Sundays. I take vacation days, that kind of thing. And I'll come back on Monday and start sorting through the posts and sorting through the questions and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, great job. You answered that for me. Wow, fantastic. And these are community members. The key is that they have the shared understanding and the knowledge.
Mm.
And so not only do we recommend, like, please contribute to each other's posts, but we also recommend that they reference the material. Like, hey, you're going through this. Make sure you check out this video so that you can get the knowledge that I have. Let me explain that a little bit, right?
I asked the question the way that I did because I think for probably two reasons. The first is, and I think this goes back to sometimes the creator educators' objections to memberships and community, that there's this, I would say, like maybe a misunderstanding that all or 100% of the value in the membership has to come directly from the creator, versus there's like some maybe undefined, unquantified, but material proportion of value that comes from like intermember interaction.
Oh yeah.
And belonging. And that, so like understanding that can help lessen the burden, maybe the feeling of burden or responsibility to some degree.
Yeah.
The second is, I think that when I see communities go, there's a bunch of reasons I think communities can go in often bad directions. You highlighted some, like not having appropriate boundaries and like setting mutual understanding of culture and values, and holding bad actors accountable. But more often, so I see that happen. I also see initially just like struggling with, creators will struggle with like ghost town syndrome, and they just can't get the flywheel of community interaction started in the first place.
Yeah. We've seen that too. And we've diagnosed why. There's nothing for them to talk about. Why are they there? If it's just to be around the creator, if you're just giving them access to you, they don't care about each other. Matter of fact, the other peers in the group are competition. Right?
Yeah.
And then the other side of that is, if there's not a shared understanding or a backbone of knowledge, right? Then they don't know what the right answer is, or what at least the socially accepted answer is in that community. They also don't know what questions to ask or what help to seek, because if it's wide open for all problems, it's really difficult to answer those kind of questions, or to figure out where to go. So focus.
Focus. I was going to use the word, I often explain it as like, really good book, Atomic Network, that talks about like, if you want to build a community or marketplace, you start with like the smallest viable but like hyper engaged group of people you can find, with basically like very homogenous problems. Like you actually don't want a diversity of problems. You want like a homogeneity of problem and like topic, which I think is sort of what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I see, anecdotally, I see communities start like too unfocused, and also with too large of a group of people, versus starting with like a hyper focused group of, say, 10 very engaged members, and then more slowly and deliberately expanding from there.
Yeah. I think it's also important to recognize your hyper contributors as well, because we have people that might not be the oldest member in the group, or, as far as the membership goes, like they might be relatively new to the community, but they rapidly become the first one on the leaderboard when it comes to comments and replies and things like that. And they're just always contributing. They're always there. Those people get burned out really quickly. And it's part of who they are, right? They're community driven. They're probably digitally extroverted.
So they might not be extroverted in IRL, but they're digitally extroverted.
Right. They want to be in the conversation. If you don't reward those, they eventually get either burned out and they kind of fade away, or which is worse, they become bitter. Like, I've contributed so much to this community, I'm not getting anything out of it. So we actually have a system in place where there is a revolving board inside the community for hyper contributors, and it's invite only. So every 3 months we refresh our board. There's 6 people on the board, and we try to keep things super diverse to have a whole bunch of different backgrounds and opinions on the board. And the board's responsibility is really just to, number one, keep their ear to the ground so that they can bring things to us that they're noticing. Maybe it's direct messages that they're getting. Maybe it's like trends that they're seeing on posts. But then also we just ask them to contribute, right? Ask them to respond to things, ask them to, welcome the new members, that kind of thing. And in exchange, we have a monthly meeting with our board members and we thank them. And that's totally enough to continue to keep
them engaged and not burnt out and not bitter.
Yeah. That's all they really need, which is fantastic. I think it works out for everybody.
That's a great tactic. I will probably steal that from you.
Do it, please.
I'll credit you, of course, but I'll probably steal that from you.
I think that there is also kind of a motivation behind the people that ask that question, which is like, can the community fill in for me? Can people get value from the community? And that's that passive income reputation of this education economy.
Yeah, how do you feel about that? I can sense by the way that you're saying it that you may feel negative about that.
Yeah, I can't stand it. Yeah, I can't stand it. I think that if you're in the business of education and if you're in the business of community building for the purpose of making people's lives better, if you also expect not to work hard at that, something I don't respect. And I think that it's a fallacy, because in order to have the impact on people, it's a lot of hard work. Yeah. We do comment.
It's kind of a weird mindset where it's like it's almost a mindset where you're prioritizing. It's very egocentric and you're very much, it's all about like extracting value as opposed to like providing value, or at the very least a contractual sufficiently mutual exchange of value.
In the creator economy, your time, the time that you have where you're relevant is limited. People talk about, a 2 to 3 to 4 year span. I mean, we've been going pretty strong for about 7 years. What will not phase out, what will not kind of fall out of relevance is delivering value to people. And if you can create an incredible product, if you can create an incredible community that delivers value to the people who pay you to join, that will outlast your relevance in the social sphere. And I think that the fight that's worth fighting, the problem that's worth solving, is to create the thing that's going to provide the most value instead of just trying to fund your creator dreams.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good lesson for people. I mean, so many creators are concerned about like the durability of their career, the length of the creator relevancy life cycle. And I do hope that more take on building these more durable, lasting businesses. And then to your point, the only way to do that really well is to like discard this value extraction mindset and give value to a community of your true fans who can benefit for long periods of time. I mean, that's really what it's about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same thing with more traditionally considered passive products too. When's the last time you updated your courses? When's the last time that you published new LUTs in your LUTs pack, right? Like, make sure that whatever products you're putting out there continually deliver value after its kind of initial wave. I think that once that big launch comes through, once you've achieved success with that big wave, then you need to go back and talk to your customers and really make sure that that thing that you created is providing value.
Yeah.
I think that's also why the passive income, the fake gurus, that whole world has kind of come about because of so many products that were created but not followed up with, right? They weren't improved to make sure that we're providing value. And unfortunately, it brings the entire the perspective of the digital education ecosystem down.
Yeah. I want to share with you a super secret dream of mine that I've been harboring for a long time, and that is to create really good reaction and commentary content around like fake guru busting. Kind of, you familiar with like CoffeeZilla? What he does?
Yeah.
With like MLM and crypto scams?
Yeah.
We need somebody more aggressively busting the fake guru like entrepreneur.
Oh my God.
World.
I'm so scared of that world. I'm terrified of it.
They'll come for you, won't they?
It's why that, like, I've resisted to this point from calling myself a coach.
Yeah.
Oh God. I'm not your guru. I can help you get to where you want to go. It's just, yeah, I'm terrified of that. But I've also got the receipts. Like, I've helped hundreds of people get to where they need to go. And even in our webinars, right, when we promote some of our products, my disclaimer is you don't need this. You don't. You can do everything that we're telling you to do on your own. We just make it a little bit easier.
Yep.
So that world, I'm good on you, man. Like, go for it. I'm staying very, very far away.
What's Ben, what's the number one biggest business problem that you're trying to solve right now as the creator COO at the Future? And problem, opportunity are sort of interchangeable words, I think, but
yeah.
What's the big thing this year that's like really going to move the needle for your business?
I think we're trying to crack the marketing puzzle. In the past, it's been pretty simple to say, hey, audience, we're doing this, right? And as long as Chris was the one that was leading the charge, as long as his face was on everything, it was pretty simple. But that put Chris in a position where he was creating all of the marketing material and he was running all of the webinars. And so we kind of have to go back to the drawing board and look at, like, how can we do this with Chris? But then also, how can we do this without Chris? Like, how can we preach? How can we share how we're helping people? How can we share what we're doing for our members, the people who take our courses, the people who use our templates, that kind of thing? How can we do that in a way that's going to bring in customers without having the whole thing led by an influencer, right? So we're kind of going back to marketing 101 for us right now.
Well, we try to end these episodes with some really pointed advice from our creator COO friends like you, Ben. What's your advice for individuals who want to step into a creator COO role? How to find it, what to expect. What advice would you give to these sort of new and or budding COOs in the creator space?
That's a broad question.
And I ask it in part because I think it's part of our mission here with the Creator COO podcast is to try to elevate COOs, but also I think surface more and encourage more people to step into the operator role to support the creators. We see a lot of the creators in the spotlight. We see a lot less of the creator operator.
Sure.
I think my sense is that the more creator COOs we can create, it's this sort of rising tide that lifts all boats, and it's really the creators who ultimately benefit.
Yeah, I have a couple words of advice. The first is look for a good match. Look for the yin to your yang in a creator, because some creators that I've seen will want to do jobs A, B, and C and need you to fill in the rest of the alphabet. Whereas some other ones will want X, Y, and Z, and want you to fill in the rest of the alphabet. And so I think, number one, when you're looking for a role there, not only just make sure you align with the creator's messaging, but also just make sure that, like, operationally, job descriptions, that kind of thing, make sure there's alignment there, because if you expect to do something that the creator wants to keep on their plate, that can cause some conflict.
Sure.
And then the other thing is just be willing to figure it out. That's going to be my next tattoo. I'm having it right here on my wrist, and it's just going to be just a reminder that you'll figure it out. Because I've done everything. I've worn every hat. I've cleaned the toilets. I've been in the room with deals with incredible brands. You'll figure it out, but you have to be willing to put yourself in sometimes uncomfortable situations where you don't really know what you're doing to figure it out, especially if you are the first hire for a creator, right? Especially if you're employee number 2.
Sure.
Man, you're going to have to do a whole bunch of stuff. So just be willing to figure it out. And I think that the best thing is just to take the prompt from the creator, say, hey, we should make an AI powered coaching robot. It's like, I have never done that in my life, but I will figure it out. And then you just get to work, right? You make your phone calls, you do your Googling, and eventually have faith that you'll figure it out.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this, Ben. It's so interesting to hear about, your journey from the early days with the Future to the state that it's in today. I particularly enjoyed hearing about how you and Chris work together and how you sort of think about splitting up the roles and building out the team. And then near and dear to my heart is how deeply you think, not just you as a person, but how deeply your company is thinking about the memberships and the community offering. So thank you so much for your time, Ben. I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
I hope we do it again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Creator COO. If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Also, please consider giving us a rating and a review, as this helps other creators and creator COOs like you to find the podcast. This episode was produced by Rebecca Donovan at Uscreen. It was edited by Richard Middleton at Longwave Digital, with artwork designed by Spencer Marsh. I'm Matt Estes, and you've been listening to The Creator COO. See you next time.